Do you know the number one thing that surprises engaged couples? Take a guess. The sheer amount of decisions they have to make while planning a wedding. Indoors or outdoors? How many guests? Are kids invited? Controversial. Which cake flavor? Seriously, how do you even begin to figure out what's right for you? That's where Zola comes in. Zola has everything you need to make every wedding decision a piece of cake, from choosing your dream wedding venue and vendors to deciding how to best spend your budget. With tons of customizable wedding websites, save the dates, and invites, every detail will feel like you. Zola will even help you choose the gifts, experiences, and cash funds you really want. The next thing you know, you've planned your whole wedding all in one place. From getting engaged to getting married, Zola has everything you need to plan your wedding in one place. Start planning at Zola.com. That's Zola.com.
At Kroger, an annual Boost membership just got even better. Now you can choose from Disney Plus with ads, Hulu with ads, or ESPN Plus on us when you sign up. Plus, enjoy unlimited free delivery, double fuel points, exclusive offers, and free items. Sign up for a Boost membership today. It's an easier way to save, including new streaming options to relax with while we deliver your groceries. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Life will happen if you don't choose it. And it's the same with your breath. And then that makes us animal. But the metaphor of breath work as a conscious choice is like the metaphor of a conscious life. That as humans, what makes us different than animals is that we can choose the life that we want.
The Walk in Victory podcast is for people looking to gain great insight and personally develop. If that's not you, then we may not be your taste. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
I will also post on my channels. Yeah.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory walks, one of the most important things that we can do, one of the most important things that we do subconsciously is breathe. But always breathe properly. And when we breathing is something that can be taught. In fact, it should be taught. In fact, I teach people how to breathe. Breathing, proper breathing, helps oxygenate the body, helps open up the brain. If you are more of a pragmatic thinker and use one side of the brain, when certain breath exercises can help your imagination open up. You can use certain breathing techniques, opposite side of nostril breathing. Most of the breathing techniques that we do is all nostril-based breathing. The nostrils have hairs in it, helps to filter the air, helps to bring breath into. If you're breathing into the gut brain, it expands, it contracts, and it helps. You breathe into the heart, and then most importantly, breathing into the lungs. Believe it or not, a lot of times we don't get enough breath into the lungs. Now, all of these things that we're talking about are intentional breathing techniques, or being intentional with the breath, being intentional with what we're doing. And then now for me, I used to breathe through my mouth. Now I notice, because I'm intentional with my breath, all of my breathing is through nostrils, because I had to practice it in order to do that. It helps bring down anxiety. I was at a basketball practice and I'm listening to the coach telling the kids to breathe wrong. Mouth breathing helps to spike anxiety. If you're tired, you stop breathing through the mouth, you heighten your senses. We want to deregulate the senses. So we take deep breaths through the nostrils, and it helps the nervous system calm down. Why am I talking about breath? Because today we're going to talk to one of our masters, and we're going to sit you at the feet of the masters, and he is going to go in deeper to how breath can help even in trauma-based situations. Elijah, how are you, sir?
I'm great.
Thanks.
How about you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for joining in. Can you explain to the audience what it is that you do, and we'll go from there?
Sure. Maybe I can corral some of the things that you've said and just organize them in my world. So, well, I was a musician in my 20s in the music business, and I studied voice training, so breathing. I studied with a voice teacher for theater, but I was a singer and I studied singing. So I know all about diaphragmatic breathing. And I was even just before about to tell you where I went with this, I was even teaching voice and breath breathing. I ended up trying this very intense mouth breathing technique in 1990 in Canada with this guy who was moving to California, and he had learned it in India. And it was basically, he was breathing rapidly through the mouth, and it was the most profound, powerful experience I'd ever had in my life. So much so that he had a training in San Francisco. I followed him out there. I took the training. I moved out to the Bay Area where I live now, and my whole life became centered around breath work. So first, I'll just say the breath work, it's a very generic term. It just means breath and work. You were talking about the mechanism of the lungs. It's interesting because all of your internal organs are unconscious, like you're an animal, and they work no matter what, including your lungs. But the lungs have this unique ability to both be automatic and unconscious. You can operate it like a manual or automatic, like a car. So the conscious use of your breath, the choice to breathe, is what breathwork is. And breathwork, and if you, as you said, there's nose breathing, there's mouth breathing, there's inhale, exhale, there's left side, right side, and then there's holding breath, different retentions. That's all of breathwork. But it's thousands of years old because it's the fundamental core thing we need to do to live. And I would say we are animals. We can be unconscious. We can go through our life. You don't have to think about it. Just do whatever is told to you by parents. Go get a job, do that, whatever. Don't think about your life at all. You'll still be alive. You don't have to remind yourself to have a life. Life will happen if you don't choose it. And it's the same with your breath. And then that makes us animal. But the metaphor of breath work as a conscious choice is like the metaphor of a conscious life. That as humans, what makes us different than animals is that we can choose the life that we want. The reason why you have a podcast is because people are listening in because they want to make their life better. And that conscious choice, that self-awareness is the in and the journey out. You're out there in my world, but I'm inside me and I'm talking from the thoughts that are inside me. And like when you start to do that with your breathing, you're bridging the inner world and the outer world, the conscious and the unconscious, the breath in, which is life, and the breath out is death. So every breathwork technique has this power to just raise your awareness and make you more aware. And then all the things that you said can really help you with physiological things because of trauma or stress, or you're angry or you're sad or whatever. The first place it goes to is your breathing, because breath is life and the power to live comes through breathing. So anytime there's difficulty, there'll be difficulty in your breathing. So my particular technique, and just to clarify, because you made a very good point, but it's the most important point that I would want to make in your show, is that breathing through your mouth inherently is unhealthy. You're leaking your energy. In Chinese medicine, you have these two circuits, the governing and conception vessel. And if you put the tongue on the roof of your mouth, you close up the circular circuit and it keeps all your energy inside. So your mouth's open, you're breathing, you're just leaking out your energy. And when people have panic attacks, they hyperventilate and they're like, and they start to do this thing. My technique is mouth breathing, and it's a conscious hyperventilation. So you might ask, why would anybody want to do this? By the way, I have doctors in my family I've argued with. When I moved to San Francisco, I couldn't get anyone to let me do this work in their place. So I opened my own place, and it was right next to all the hospitals. So I always argued with doctors about hyperventilation. Hyper just means more than enough, and then ventilation. When someone starts to hyperventilate, they're having memory of trauma and they're trying to release it. That's what it is. Conscious hyperventilation, which is my technique, and I can demonstrate it to you if you want. We can do a little bit together, 10 breaths, is the choice to voluntarily breathe into the heart center where all the trauma and injuries of life are. And when you breathe into that, it will blow your mind because you will access all of the stuck energy buried in the unconscious from the time of trauma. And it is an immediate release of anxiety, fear, trauma, worry, all these different states and things that we are all struggling with right now. So in my technique, you lay on your back and you breathe like that for an hour without stopping. So there's no escape from where it's going to take you. But the reason why it's been with me for 35 years is because there are so many ways that people are trying to help themselves, and this is immediate. You don't have to be, what I like about it, say during the election week, is it's democratic. You don't have to be healthy. You don't have to be young. You don't have to be spiritually evolved. You don't even have to understand how the damn thing works. If you do it and you're laying on your back, so it's not very difficult, it will change your life every time.
It's funny. Me too, music background. So we talked about it the other day.
Yeah.
In my 20s, I took vocal lessons, and I loved the connection. It was more like, it was for healthy singing, right? So it was more like opera tones and sounds, but it was intricate with expanding the breath and turning the breath into the sounds.
I studied with an opera singer too, by the way. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So
you're frozen.
You understand, like,
you're frozen.
Mask, rather you frozen. I'm back.
You're okay now. It's a little crackly though, but okay. I think we're good. Continue.
Yeah. So when I started to understand how to manipulate sounds with the breath, when I got into mindfulness, I had already came in with an understanding of breath. But when I started to look at the power of breath, the power, and with this technique, I've seen this technique that you're talking about, because you're bringing someone into a state of anxiety or trauma purposefully. Is that that's what you're looking at?
Yeah, a couple things. We're not trying to bring anybody into a state.
Okay.
You said breath has the power of the universe in it. Oxygen does. No, oxygen is what gives us life, but it's the life force inside oxygen, the chi, the prana, that of the universe. So our job, like our life, is to try to extract the potential of that energy. So breathing has that potential. That's why we have the ability to consciously choose to breathe. Because if you just breathe and if you don't think about it, you're not necessarily extracting the potential of the breath in the same way that you're not extracting the potential of your life if you don't think about it. And so when you start to breathe, what you're doing is, I'm just using the technique to help a person to access their life force energy, but in the end, and connect to who they really are before all these traumatic, conditioned things that have happened to them. But all on the journey of breathing like that, you're going to encounter the patterns, the resistance. And so you were saying anxiety, but when you start to breathe, things will come up that will be the obstacles to that connection. Just like in life, when you go out into life, I want something. And then I face what happens when I go and live my life and try to get it. So that's really what the game of breath game, but that's what the breath work's about, is that when you start to breathe like that, we're not forcing people into their traumas. We're taking them on a bridge back to the inner world where all the energy that got stuck at some point. And traumas, by the way, can be big or small. It doesn't have to be abuse. It doesn't have to be intentional. It's anything you couldn't process gets held and affects your breathing pattern, affects your health, affects your state of mind, your willingness to feel your feelings, all these things. So we breathe like this to move it out. But in the process, yes, it can be very emotional and very, powerful.
I love the way that you use the analogy, and this is my interpretation of
Yeah.
what you said, where the energy is in the breath, right? But it's trying to extract that energy out when we're doing these exercises. They're like
Yeah.
seeds that we're planting, and whether it's when we're taking ourselves through these exercises and we get into the state of bliss or the state of zen, right? But those seeds, while we're there, we want to plant them, and then eventually they do produce harvest. There's no one that I've worked with where we've done breath work together that walked away and said, that didn't work.
Right. Well, I've done tens of thousands of people, and I have had people say that. The question is, what do they mean by work? I had a woman say it was the worst thing that ever happened to her since sex abuse. And it's,
Wow.
Do you know the number one thing that surprises engaged couples? Take a guess. The sheer amount of decisions they have to make while planning a wedding. Indoors or outdoors? How many guests? Are kids invited? Controversial. Which cake flavor? Seriously, how do you even begin to figure out what's right for you? That's where Zola comes in. Zola has everything you need to make every wedding decision a piece of cake, from choosing your dream wedding venue and vendors to deciding how to best spend your budget. With tons of customizable wedding websites, save the dates, and invites, every detail will feel like you. Zola will even help you choose the gifts, experiences, and cash funds you really want. The next thing you know, you've planned your whole wedding all in one place. From getting engaged to getting married, Zola has everything you need to plan your wedding in one place. Start planning at Zola.com. That's Zola.com.
Kroger Delivery makes it easy to do your holiday shopping in a jingle. There might be a lot on your to-do list, but thanks to Kroger Delivery, you can get everything you need delivered straight to your door at the same great prices you'd find in store. Our refrigerated trucks always ensure that your groceries arrive fresh. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order of $75 or more and get free delivery with a Boost membership. Restrictions apply. See site for details. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
maybe that memory was coming up. Like all you were doing was breathing. I don't understand. But I think that for your listeners, anybody, doesn't matter where you are on the path, but part of the job when you start to take care of yourself is to try to understand what's going on in that process, because you are trying to figure out how to get the benefit of whatever it is that you decide to do. And anyway, and plant seeds.
Yeah. So
on.
this is what these are the technique that we're discussing that we're going to go through a little bit, is what you have been using since you started, or do you have a variation of techniques that you couple together?
I'm turning 61, by the way. Like that day that I did that breath work, I could have never imagined that I will be on this podcast with you 35 years later and just still talking about breathing. So there's two parts in the work that I would do with people. I see this in two parts. One is the trauma release. It's like I use the breath work sorry, let me back up. After about 10 years of doing my teacher's technique and working with people, I realized that the relationship I was having with people was not more important, but just as important as the time in the breathwork, because people would talk about their life and their problems. And I started to realize that just doing the breathwork, like, it didn't necessarily lead to a better life, because Some people were doing it just to get high or to feel better. But so slowly I started to recognize there was a process of what the breath work revealed and how to use the breath work to make a better life. So first step was just to clear all this stuff that was stuck that makes people have problems with their health and problems with their mind and problems in their life, even their magnetism that creates relationships and problems that they don't want. So then, side tangent, I started studying Tai Chi in 1999, and with my teacher, who eventually I went to China. I went to China 21 times. I studied with many masters, internal martial arts. So that's a 25-year subject. And I was using the movement like Qigong and Tai Chi and these sort of things in my work, but I didn't necessarily know how to make a case for what it had to do with anything I was doing other than it felt good. And I didn't even know after 20 years that all of the work that I was doing was based in Taoism, which is how the universe works. Like it's spirituality or God as a nature. So science, physics, animals, elements. And I had a big awakening and the systems came to me. So I use movement, these Taoist energy practices and movement to go to the second part, which is you can awaken in the breath work. You can come back to your original configuration. You mentioned about planting seeds. Like we're born as an acorn that wants to become an oak tree. But when we have trauma, it changes the configuration and then we're no longer on the same trajectory. So the breath work is about coming back to your original nature. But that doesn't mean you have to know how to go out and live your life. And the movements I teach train different functions because we have so many habit patterns in the body. And the breath work, what's beautiful about it is it doesn't really train anything. It just clears you and puts you back in a natural state. But learning how to live your life and fulfill your life. So I have these two parts, and anybody who ends up coming into my world eventually will see that there's both parts there. One is the clearing, the trauma release, and the other is the manifestation of this realized self in your life. Make sense?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense because the other piece that I do with movement, which I started out more so in the movement with the yoga piece and mindful movements. And then as I started to do my research and get more training, I realized how important, even though our movements are coupled with the breath, meaning that we use the breath to flow us through the movements. But then being still, using imagery, using imagination, like taking a person there along with the breath really helps to open up so much more, right? Because within the breath, there's limitless potential, right? We don't know where it's coming from.
Within us is limitless potential.
And in us is a limitless potential. So we're marrying the two together. And if a person is going through something and you can see it in their bodies when they're like, so say, relax your shoulders. If to get a sense of relax, right? Then you look at their face, they get a little smile on their face. Or
the breath is not in their body, that they have tension. That tension shows a lack of oxygen.
Yes.
And that comes from trauma and conditioning. Yeah.
And as we're working and we see people, we see the transformation. How does that feel for you then when you see an individual being transformed by the impact of what it is that started out 35 years ago and that seed is now producing harvest today?
I'll be very honest about it. So for one, this is what I was meant to do. And so I accepted. And of course, it's unbelievably gratifying to be in the relationship with people about what really matters to them and see that the things that I'm doing with them help them. The technique is one thing, but the technique is in a relationship, particularly mine. Part of the philosophy of my breathwork, effigy, has to do with the facilitator and breather's relationship, because some techniques, they don't they train you, don't just let people do whatever they're going to do. And like you and I like you. I don't know why, but you've got a great vibe to you. Like I felt that way when we talked before. Like our human engine, our human connection is the most powerful thing. It's more powerful than any technique. So I get great gratification of having relationships with people that transfer them. But if I be really honest, it's a very complex and challenging job. And I'm not whining. I'm just saying being a guide, there's a lot of expectation that people have, a lot of things that people think about how things work. If you go to one time I was my ex-brother-in-law, who was a doctor, a surgeon, and we were talking about our work. And he said, the difference between your job and my job is nobody asks me how I do surgery. Nobody asks me to explain how. They believe me. So with me, everybody wants to know how I'm here to both educate people to be their own doctors when they agree with what I say and I see, because I can read the unconscious very easily. That's how I got into this. The breathwork was like, now that's the real world. That was what I saw all along. And so I see or they don't like or touches some trauma pattern. They don't. I take the gratitude I have for the transformational parts that happen with people. I just let it go, because there's many people who don't change because they don't want to do that work and they hate me and they leave. So I just accept the whole thing. This is my weird life. So that's my honest answer.
No, that's
otherwise I'd be real new agey and tell you how wonderful it is and how beautiful and it's actually not like that. It's my world, my role in the wellness world is a little tiny corner that's not that comfortable. It's like the breath work. It's very rigorous and I sell the challenge. I'm the CrossFit of spiritual practices.
Let's go. We have a few moments left.
Yeah.
Let me get this experience. This may be something
Okay.
that I add to my repertoire. Here you have it.
Yeah.
Exclusively, everybody. Come on.
Yeah. Because I don't know how it works in this format, but if there's echo cancellation, you won't hear me breathe on the microphones. But I will say, just last month, I made a video. It's 3 minutes. It's on the front page of my website where people can do the technique guided by me. After all these years, this is the first time I've ever done that. So before we do the technique, know that the way you will do the technique, if you were don't do this on your own, except for what we're about to do now. It's done for an hour guided. And we're going to do it sitting up, and we're just going to do, I think because of who you are, I think we should do 20 breaths just so we can get a little bit more of this. So we're totally relaxed. The breath is going to be in the center of the chest. The mouth is open and the focus is on the inhale. And for you musicians out there, it's about 85 beats per minute. So it's got a then out. So it's going to.
Do you know the number one thing that surprises engaged couples? Take a guess. The sheer amount of decisions they have to make while planning a wedding. Indoors or outdoors? How many guests? Are kids invited? Controversial. Which cake flavor? Seriously, how do you even begin to figure out what's right for you? That's where Zola comes in. Zola has everything you need to make every wedding decision a piece of cake, from choosing your dream wedding venue and vendors to deciding how to best spend your budget. With tons of customizable wedding websites, save the dates and invites, every detail will feel like you. Zola will even help you choose the gifts, experiences, and cash funds you really want. The next thing you know, you've planned your whole wedding all in one place. From getting engaged to getting married, Zola has everything you need to plan your wedding in one place. Start planning at Zola.com. That's ZOLA.com.
And now we don't want to use the throat muscles. We don't want to use the neck. We just want to take the breath in full like you're surprised and then let it go. Can you hear me on the mic when I breathe? Okay. All right. We're going to do 20 breaths. NaRon, you just keep your eyes open and so you can follow me along here. Here we go. As full as you can. Now just close your eyes. Let it go. Just feel all the energy moving in the body. And just allow the energy to circulate. And this is really the beginning of the practice. So you might feel a little bit dizzy. You're going to feel a lot of tingling and stuff, but that's just the beginning of the journey. So how do you feel?
Wow. Wow.
The man is speechless. Yeah. So if people are watching while you're getting your bearings again, because you got to put the mind and the body back together again, in a way, what you'll say will probably be deeper and more profound. But for our listeners, if you want, rewind the recording. And now that you know that it's happening, just get yourself set up, make sure you're in a comfortable place, and then start again and try to do it laying on your back, because the reason why in my technique we do it on our back is because you can feel it's very rigorous. Believe it or not, you can do this for an hour, but it will change your life. And if you want to do 3 minutes, go to my website and it's a free, and just I guide you through the whole thing. And then people I know, people have been doing this, they've been doing it once a day for 3 minutes.
So what happens is as we're breathing, and I felt like I was getting full,
Yeah.
right? The chest cannot contain more breath. And then I felt like the whole body just starts to open up, and then it was like, wow, I can contain more.
Yeah, you can feel it. Yeah.
I can feel the expansion. I felt the chest cavity expanding. Whereas when I'm doing a similar technique and really pushing it to the belly, and I know the belly can contract and expand, but the chest,
Belly doesn't bring up what we're doing.
Yes.
And I'm curious, did you have a moment like, Jesus Christ, I don't want to do this anymore?
I got it.
You had a moment where
It wasn't like I
Yeah.
want to quit. It felt like you know when is it those
it's like
apparatuses?
squeezing you like
And
a
yeah.
sponge.
Yeah, and wow.
Yeah.
But then when we stopped, I felt everything just kind of
Reorganizing.
yes.
Yeah.
That was a great experience. Listen, everyone,
And you probably feel like relaxed a little
I
too.
do.
A little more.
I do.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. I really appreciate your time spending this afternoon with us.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Everyone, as I told you, we sit you at the feet of the masters, and you just had an experience with Elijah, the breath man. And I am elated to have been able to sit down and have this conversation with you. My last question: what books have influenced you, impacted you, fiction, nonfiction, that you would tell somebody that they can read?
I will say I did publish a book this year on my work called The Trauma Code. Going to be honest and say part of my trauma patterning and the things that I do not read spiritual books, and I never have, don't read self-help books. I've written 3, but I don't read them. If human design, I'm what's called a manifester. And a lot of what I know is produced internally. And if I do too much listening and feedback in the world around me, it's not that great for me. I read lots of fiction. I love Murakami and all kinds of writers and things, but I like creative artists. But when I was in my 20s, a couple of years before the breathwork came to me, my spiritual life awoke, and I remember reading Uspensky. That was one book that I read. But other than that, I feel like the reason why I don't read is the same reason why you can see how visceral this breathwork is. I think there's only so much you can get from books, because we're in a culture trained for information and skill in the linear mind. And that's part of our trauma pattern collectively, is gathering information and data, and transformation doesn't happen at that level. It does at the beginning, like you go to therapy and you talk about things, but we want to get beyond the mind. That's why this breath work works, because if you breathe for an hour, your mind cannot control. And also, last thing to say, when I wrote this book a couple of years ago, it was 3 times as long, and I ended up cutting out 2/3 of the book because I wanted people to get something viscerally from reading the book, even if they never did the work. But if I put all that information in the book, then people would read the book thinking somehow they're learning something. And you really can't. It's a transmission. Real transformation involves a transmission between teacher and student. I believe in that. I have teachers and guides and mentors always. I have even now. So I feel like you that you like that. Why do
Yes,
you like
I
that?
like that. I like that. Transformation happens because there is an exchange, right? And that
Yeah.
exchange,
Transmission. Yeah.
transmission. Yeah. So there you have it. As you're transforming with us, we don't walk with our heads down. We don't walk making excuses. We don't walk looking behind. We walk in victory. Enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to hit and subscribe. Elijah's website information is in the description or on our landing page. walkinvictory.me is the website. You can go there, and anything that you need to know about this great man is there. And enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.
Peace.